What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Hoopty's Rides and Reviews. If this is your first time, go ahead and subscribe if you don't mind. I mean, you can always unsubscribe later, if you don't like what you see. Well, today we're going to be working on, this is my dad's motorcycle. Well, all of these were my dad's motorcycles. We've actually got this one going. I'm trying to get a running video. I just don't know how to film while I'm driving because I do everything with my phone, so it's really hard to mount it. But anyway, we're going to be working on this thing today, and I've actually been taking this thing apart. You can see the carburetor is actually missing. You can see through the bike completely. Now this thing has just about every bell and whistle you could want on an old classic bike. It's got these little things here to direct the air into the radiator, or onto the motor. You got this big fairing with the windshield and everything. I'm really not into that. You got the full bagger system. Now all these bags and everything that are on here, including this Vetter fairing, I've been told are all kind of like an aftermarket thing. You just buy the bike, it comes kind of naked, just a headlight on it, and you buy these separately and install them back in the day. But I kind of want to uninstall them, but for now we're just focusing on getting this thing going. Well, I have the carburetors all apart so far. Only thing I have left to do is split the carburetors apart. I'm using the Randex rebuild as a guide. I have the DVD and everything. It's pretty much how he explained to do it. You just break everything down. I'm not going to go into too much of detail. I don't want to get sued for giving away some secrets, but you just take it apart, clean everything out. I'm in the middle of doing that. There's plenty of videos on YouTube doing that, but if you want to see that, check out a couple other channels. I might even link a couple of them. But you can see I've got this thing pretty well torn down. I've got some covering over the cylinders, or the intakes for the cylinders. This bike is actually extremely low mileage. My dad picked this thing up. It was about 4 or 5 years ago he bought this thing. It's got all the gauges right here. Now you won't believe this, but this bike has not seen very many miles. That is original, 4,589 miles. Got a little bit of a jerry-rig system here where I was trying to run fuel, see if that fuel pump would pump fuel, but it was totally clogged up. The petcock is all clogged up. I think it has a filter inside of there. I'm not sure. I have to check again, but basically everything on this fuel system was totally junk. So I used this thing to clean everything out, and this is all the sediment that was left in here from cleaning out the carbs after I dumped all the extra spray out. Now unfortunately I lost a lot of footage, the footage of me taking the carbs out and everything. That's why I'm just babbling a bunch. So let me get back to it. I'm going to go ahead and split these carburetors apart and try to rebuild them. That's the first time I've ever messed with Goldwing carbs, and I've heard they're a bit of trouble. And this carburetor was really dirty, I knew that, but man, I did not expect to see that. That looks like metal chunks on this little jet. So I got the carbs apart, and I'm removing both plenum sides. Got that one still to do, but this is where the fuel is supposed to be coming through, and that's a little bit clogged, I'd say. So we got everything torn down. I'm gonna go over this thing with a copper brush. Really only looks like one carb got the worst of it. This one here. You can see the rest of them really don't look too bad. So finally getting back to this Goldwing, I've got these 3 jugs over here. Kind of a sketchy setup, but it's the best thing I can do. I've been soaking this gas tank for about a week now with some clean gas. After soaking it with some rust remover, scrubbing it out, and then I filled it up with some gas and some fuel treatment. And now I'm gonna clean it out one more time. I got some spray cans and some brake clean and everything. We're going to clean it out and drain everything into these jugs. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, so purely out of frustration, I didn't end up recording any of it, but I was scrubbing this tank like crazy, trying to get the rest of it out. We now have ethanol-free gas mixed with a little bit of Stabil, mixed with a little bit of Lucas fuel stabilizer. It's not really fuel stabilizer, I think it's injector cleaner actually. But this bike will no longer ever get old fuel left to sit in it. I will never let that happen again. Those carburetors were terrible to rebuild. I'm not looking forward to doing that again. So now we just need to hook up fuel lines and some fuel filters and reinstall the air box and all that stuff. The tank is still not perfect, so we got 3 fuel filters. I'm gonna put 2 inline filters and then have 1 spare for like replacing it after it gets dirty. And I also got some wire because I found that things actually has a bad connection. I don't know what's going on here, but I mean, that's not safe. So we're gonna have to figure that out. Also, might as well go ahead and take this thing off and well, take it apart a little bit and see if there's anything actually like built up in it. It probably pumped a lot of trash through it, so we need to make sure there's nothing in there. And I might even put a filter between the carburetor and this pump, so we'll see. So I got my brand new line and filters, and I was looking at the old setup just to kind of compare what I was gonna do. And this is the line coming off of the pump, and this is from the petcock from the tank, so it came down and went this way to the pump and then up to the carburetor. I think I'm going to add a filter into this line just to make sure there's no stuff coming out of that old pump, but maybe after I clean it out I might change my mind. But this filter is backwards. This filter is backwards. So whoever installed this is not a very smart person. So off camera, I cracked all these guys loose. I'm just gonna go around, loosen them all up very slowly, evenly, and take this bugger off. Well, that stuff came oozing out of there, and that is not looking too great. And inside the cap, that's what it's looking like. It's not the worst on the cap, but this thing right here is pretty gross. We're gonna have to clean this out. Might even have to replace this. Luckily, I soaked this some penetrating oil, so it shouldn't be too bad. Yummy. It's actually doing pretty good. Not a total rebuild, but I did get it pretty well cleaned up in there. I got this part right here, cleaned it all out, got it put back together. Got this looking pretty good. Try to get a zoom in. I really don't know how this thing works. I've never had one of these pumps apart. I did not buy a rebuild kit, but I've seen that these pumps are about 60 bucks if we want to just replace the whole thing. Okay, so a significant difference, and I honestly fully expect this thing to leak. I mean, what is this? This gasket's probably original, and this is a 79, so yowzers. I'm not terribly happy about it, but at least for now, until I can order this plug and we can rewire this. I took this apart and spread it out, put the wire back in there, crushed it back down, made sure these guys are separated, nothing's connected. This fuse is good. So we'll go ahead and put some power to it. This is a mechanical pump, so we'll have to crank it over a little bit. It has been setting, so I'm gonna go ahead and take the spark plugs out, put some fogging oil in it just to lubricate the cylinders, and maybe I'll go ahead and put the intake back on. This is part of that. I'm really thinking about taking these valve covers off and getting them powder coated or something like that. The ones on this side look pretty good, but the ones from the other side, not so much. That rear cylinder, it's looking pretty grody. Leave these open probably so I can let it pump a little bit more free. So while the cylinder's soaked, we're gonna go ahead and turn our attention to putting this intake back together. This is where I keep everything. I got the intake sitting right here actually. fresh filter under there and everything. Go ahead and grab this thing. And I've got an extra timing belt set right here, and on top of that I've got another valve cover just in case. I actually had to replace a set. I accidentally melted it trying to get the chrome off of it. The gasket on the intake of the carburetor, getting ready to put this intake in there, and I noticed down in there it's got some gross, looks like a little bit of corrosion starting on this intake, so we'll clean that up. We've got our intake installed in there, looking nice. It's got those rubber mounted screws. The intake is painted, looking pretty good in there. I know it's looking a little dingy in here, but I'm going to clean up the inside of this thing pretty soon here. I'm just trying to get this thing running. It is a bit of a tight fit getting this intake in there. You got to cram it down in there, spread the cheeks a little bit, and go ahead and just wiggle it in there. Make sure your wires are out of the way. It should sit in there just easy. Got this air filter looking pretty brand new, so I don't know. I might order a new one just for shits and giggles, but I'm gonna throw this in there for now. Well, we're gonna have to wait for some paint to dry. When I have the tools out, I just can't help myself. I cannot put something that's starting to rust back together. I just need to prevent it. A little bit of paint, a little bit of scrubbing, and wait for it to dry. Well, we got the intake good enough for now. It's not quite 100% sealed off. We got to put those. I accidentally put those on the inside of the intake. Those go on top, but nevertheless, we'll let this stuff dry before I actually bolt this all down and everything. So we're gonna go ahead and move on to hooking this little booster box up to the battery terminals here, and we're going ahead and crank it over. All right, this is gonna be the first time this thing's had juice. I think the last time I cranked this thing was about a year ago. Let's go ahead and turn this key on. All right, we got some lights. We're gonna go ahead and give this thing a little push start and see if it pumps any gas out, I guess. Well, the starter sounds pretty good, but it might help if you turn the gas on, you know. It tends to do something. Okay, take two to see if we get any gas out of her. I was over there checking the filter to see if it was getting any action, and we got some action in the bottle. We're gonna go ahead and test the spark, one thing I haven't done, and yes, I have cut the gas off, and we don't have any gas in the carbs yet. Quick test for spark. I just got it. First test wasn't good, but it might just be a weak spark, but when I pull this thing away from it, it gives me a little bit of a spark. A little bit of research, I took this little cap off. This is the left-hand side, so you can see. Went ahead and took that little cap off the back of the valve cover and cleaned up the points. I don't know how to adjust these things, and I've zero experience with them, but I do know that they have a Dyna-S ignition system that you can upgrade to that's a little bit better. But if I can get a spark off this for now, we're gonna run it. Okay, the spark seemed pretty weak, but it was there. No better than it was before. So we're just gonna go ahead and give it a couple cranks and see if it starts pumping some gas and maybe even start this thing up. Sorry, I needed two hands for that, but we got a little bit of fire out of her. Go ahead and try this again. Alright, we got some noise. Let's check out some fluids. this thing sounds pretty good. I've actually never heard this motorcycle run. That's the first time for me. I ran it a couple times after that. I actually even drove it around the yard with the charger pack on the back. Not the greatest idea because the carbs are definitely completely out of adjustment. I've done the best I can as far as the air fuel adjustment with it, the mixture screws on there, but I wasn't able to do too much without synchronizing them. I'm just trying to kind of ballpark it so it doesn't stall out. And it's overcharging, so we need a voltage regulator, a battery, carb sync tool, and we'll be back on the road. Well, if you want to see more of this, I got some cars and some more motorcycles to go. I got a CB650 I'd like to bring back onto the road. My dad's going to take this, at least for a little while. So we're just going to have to get a few more parts of this thing, like voltage regulator and a battery. Try to clean this thing up next time. If you want to see more of this bike and my other bike, I got a CB650 in the shed, and we're going to do the motor swap on that Impala pretty soon. So hit me up. Please subscribe. Thanks for watching. Deuces.